it's Alex and welcome back to my channel. This is the most expensive paint marker. Well, not the most expensive out there. I think they were slightly overtaken by the Karen Deco Brush paint pens that just kind of like rocketed into public awareness literally a month after I finished all the filming and the collection for this video. Go figure. But these markers are the Krink K11 acrylic markers. At least I'm pretty sure K11 is part of the brand name. Maybe it's the size. I literally have no idea. Wherever I found them sold, they averaged around $8.75, whereas Posca's averaged around $3.24 or something like. Are you done? Would you like me to take off your collar for a bit? No jingle jingle boy. It's mine now. Every single one of these markers in the series is getting tested on 3 segments: the packaging, the swatching, and the drawing. I have high expectations for the most expensive paint marker in this series, and honestly, they feel really nice to hold, so let's get into the packaging and actually examine them up close. Hello, boy. Are you here for the packaging? No, you're leaving me? Okay, that's fine. They feel heavy. They feel like they're made of metal, but they are 100% not. That sticker really fools you, but this cap, fully clear plastic. Everything about this marker, clear plastic. Whatever shaker they have inside of there must actually add some really good heft, because they feel good to hold. These markers are a photographing nightmare. At least to me, from this angle, they are completely illegible, especially all of the really tiny font. I have to move it as I read it so that way I can manage to get the light to shine on right where I'm reading. From the point of someone who takes pictures of their art supplies next to their drawings, they're gonna be horrible to set up. For personal use, they're actually very easy to tell what brand of marker they are, but in photos, I have a feeling that they're going to be a bit of a pain. Now the cap. Just a little insight into the process of me filming this series. I've done multiple different takes of this. The first time I went through and tried swatching these, I found out that this little ridge inside of the pen cap is not good. Oh no! I've just ruined the nib. It has that stupid little indent and I put it in catty corner and that nib is destroyed. They were already really soft nibs. I hope these are reversible. Okay, thank God. These are reversible nibs. Let's see if the other side of the pen is still... Yeah. So you see how this pen nib is incredibly flattened? It fell victim to its own cap. If you're not careful and putting these in the pen incredibly slowly, you might try to put it in at an angle. For most pens, I feel like there's either like a cone or something to help redirect the pen nib into the correct spot, but no, this just has a hard line that is hell-bent on splitting your pen nib in half. People who are really quickly putting caps back on pens just absent-mindedly, because like it shouldn't be rocket science to put the pen back in the cap, you're gonna destroy your nibs. And this is how much replacements are. And then on top of that, this is another pen that I feel like missed the mark on the cap. If this little insert clip they had to already separately manufacture would just be the color of the marker, then they wouldn't have a bad cap to me. They'd be noticeable enough from the other markers. The cap overall, I'm going to give a -1.5 for, because I'm just really mad that I'm going to have to land the pen inside of the cap like I'm docking a spaceship. because I really don't want to destroy the most expensive markers I own. And the nib is incredibly soft. I also just realized I missed over the kind of most important part that I usually put on markers, which is the color name and number. It is right here on the orange and the light green. It is the only thing that is not metallic, but it is metallic on the purple. They could have made acrylic paint marker in one line, K11 in another line, and then the color name right here, right next to the brand name where I kind of expect it to be on most markers. I'm just mad about the cap. So these are going to get a 2 in the packaging. While we only have 3 markers to test, I am still going to do just 2 for the swatches, so we'll use the purple and the light green. Nice juicy marker right off the bat, but gotta replace it carefully. The dots are pretty regular on this pen, but let's see. Not bad on this one, even though I have run it into the inside of the cap. This isn't the worst offending side, because I have switched this nib around and done it on both sides. But these nibs feel a little dry on the line. And the purple one is definitely a slightly harder nib. This one swishes down a little more. Here is one layer of opacity. They really give you some resistance when you push down. It feels counterintuitive with a really soft nib like this to have so much, to need to put so much pressure into it. All right, here goes the second layer. There's 2 layers. It's not giving me any sheen issues, but I feel like the opacity of specifically the purple is just not wowing me. And the color of the light green is also not wowing me. For being the most expensive marker in this group, I would expect them to be a little bit more va-va-voom of colors, but it's just kind of bland. For example, here are 3 swatches of the closest light green / aqua green colors I have. One is a later brand we will be talking about, the Pilot Pinter. One is the Krink, and one is the Posca aqua green. Overall, I think this aqua green, in comparison to the others, is just kind of dingy. I certainly wouldn't grab for it between the other 2, and they're already very close. On the gesso test, let's see if I get any splatter. The edges of this marker just kind of feather on this. I'd have to go over it a few times very slowly to make sure it doesn't splatter out. Let's try all of these swatches before we move on to the next part. Let's see if this passes the varnish test. I will be using a high gloss varnish from Liquitex. I typically use spray-on varnishes, but I would like to switch to brush-on, and this is the only one I have at the moment. It's immediately pulling purple up from the second swatch, the first across a part of that area. I like to go up and down to make sure I've fully coated everything. And that's very obviously bleeding out purple. So this fails the varnish test. So here's the light over the dark. Ooh, there was a paper scrap there. The light green is definitely dulled when going over the purple. The purple is layering over a little better, but the single layer still doesn't give me a lot of confidence for the opacity of this paint. The next section is seeing how well it would cover over a sketch. So here's a scribble for pencil and a scribble for color ace pencil. So here's the light green. Okay, that doesn't layer over too bad. I can't really see the sketch through it. And I can see it's not gonna come across on camera, but in person I can see the swoop here. Now let's see how each of these takes colored pencil. It just helps give a little bit more depth to some areas. This is a pretty bright colored pencil color, but it just looks really dingy on the light green. It also grabs really weirdly at the pencil. Now time for the purple. I feel like the same thing. I'm not getting the worst gradient I've seen in this test group, but it's not going as dark as I would like it to be, or as vibrant. So these for sure lost on the varnish test and the opacity test, and I also feel like these nibs are a little too soft. I'm just not wowed by these. So they lose a point in the opacity, they lose a point on the varnish, and I can still see the pencil through, so that's going to be another half point off. So these are going to get a 3.5 on the swatch department. Now let's get into the drawing. Every brand in this series was randomly matched up with one illustration, and those illustrations were also randomly generated. I'm not going to count against these for not being the colors that I wanted them to be. I didn't think the orange was going to be this dark. I didn't think the purple was going to be this light. The teal light green came out about as well as I thought it would. The first thing about these markers that shocked me was how little paint I could really get out of them. No matter how hard I pushed, it just kind of distributed an average amount. I tried putting down a lot of paint in some areas, especially on the orange that didn't have a lot of good opacity, and I was having a lot of trouble. The colors all dried very desaturated from what I expected them to be. I'm not going to count the three colors not working together against them. In the moment, I was having a really hard time trying to see how this piece was going to turn out. I considered stopping and making a new illustration, one that could potentially work with this randomly selected color palette, because this piece was randomly selected for this brand. I didn't deliberately pick this one for this brand, and it had me worried. And then this happened. I was already taking some liberties with my usual line art style and going a little bit more scratchy, but I decided I don't play with splatters a lot. I've just splattered paint, so let's get a paintbrush out and do some splatters. I think I could have done more splatters looking at it now, but I was also concerned about doing too much because I don't want my metaphorical too much gene to run away with me here. But I like this piece okay. The big problem is the entire time I was working with these markers, I just kept thinking, is this it? The marker colors are really kind of desaturated. They actually didn't really like my white Posca pen. I had a lot of troubles with them. And then I peeled up the tape and it crept under pretty much the entire way around. And even the cheapest marker I have used in the series didn't do it. Some of the layers where I did 2 layers of paint also still had opacity problems. The nib of the purple was damaged, so I couldn't get the exact shapes I wanted. So I think that these markers could be more. So here's the full final piece. I've said this a few times already in this video, but I'm just not wowed. For a marker of this price point to not blow me away or rise above all the other competition. It just, if it had the opacity, it has the texture I like, and if the nibs were slightly different, they feel too soft for needing to put so much pressure on them to pump them, that I don't want to pump them too hard and risk damaging the nib, so they end up being dry. As far as the process of these go, these are going to receive a 2 in the drawing section. So out of a possible 15, 7.5. They land squarely between Liquitex and Pebeo at 4th, which I feel like they should be a little lower than that because I'm just really disappointed that these really expensive markers didn't do better. I'm starting to run out of good ways to display all of these in one shot, but here is the current lineup, with the top runner being Posca's, Molotov's, Pebeo markers, Krink, Liquitex, Montana, and Amsterdam. If you would like to see any of these other brands and my in-depth analysis of those, the link to that playlist will be at the end of this video. Thank you guys for joining me while I create this little fiction, but I hope you guys follow along with me for the next marker in the Paint Marker Marathon. See you guys in the next one.